Hey there, welcome back to our series here where I am answering your questions. My name is Megan Sumrell. I am a time management expert for women, and I am on a mission to bring work-life harmony to women all over the world through all things time management, organization, and productivity. And today's question that I'm going to be answering is this. It was submitted in asking, hey, Megan, what should I do when I feel completely overwhelmed by my task list? Meaning there's so much to do that oftentimes we just end up getting paralyzed and we don't do anything because we just can't even figure out where to start. Now, first, I want to tell you this. This happens to everybody. So if you have experienced it, if you are experiencing it right now, don't beat yourself up. This is normal. So first, I want to talk through what that looks like and what's actually happening when we get overwhelmed by our task list. And then I'm going to be sharing with you a simple but super powerful 3-step process you can use to kind of get yourself over the hump and back on track whenever this happens. I call it my ditch the overwhelm process. So first, let's take a minute and talk about what's actually happening to us when we get to this state feeling completely overwhelmed by our task list, all right? And this can happen at any time. One of the times I share that happens to me pretty much all the time is anytime I come back from an extended trip. I usually come home and I start thinking about everything that needs to happen and I get overwhelmed. So what we're talking about here is any time where you are looking at the realities of everything that maybe is sitting there on your calendar, your wheels are spinning with all the things that you're thinking of that maybe you either need to or want to get done, you just feel completely overwhelmed. You're not even sure where to start. So what's actually happening up here between our ears when this happens is it triggers our brain to move into that kind of fight or flight mentality or freeze, fight, flight, or freeze mentality. When that is happening, when we are feeling overly anxious, overly nervous, overwhelmed, overly stressed, whatever word kind of resonates with you, what actually happens is the chemicals in our brain do move into that fight, flight, or freeze mentality. This leads us to not be able to think very rationally. And we start to make very irrational or poor decisions, or we just freeze altogether and we're like, that's it. I don't even know what to do. So one of the ways that this manifests for me in my life is when I start to get overwhelmed by everything that's on my list, I just start like projecting out into the future and I'll start thinking things like, wait, I'm going to be able to get this done. And then if I can't get this done, then that means I'm going to have to not sleep for the next 3 days. And then after not sleeping for the next 3 days means that this is going to happen. And then this, and I just start going down crazy paths, starting to predict what the future is going to be in a completely irrational way. Again, if you do that, totally normal. It's because your brain is in that place where we just can't think rationally. Now I want to tell you what we can do to get out of this mental state so that we can actually get back into action. So there's a 3-step process I'm going to walk you through here. Now, if you've been keeping up with this series, you may remember that I recently answered a question on the difference between a task list versus a plan. If you missed that, I would encourage you to go back and check that out because I'm going to be telling you something that might seem like it's contradicting that, but I did mention in that training, there is a time and a place for creating an actual list. All right. So step 1, the very first thing that you want to do whenever you're in complete overwhelm is to give yourself a time limit, no more than 10 minutes. All right. And if you're going to take less, even better. And then you're actually going to, I like to use sticky notes such as these, or I teach a lot on Trello. So if you use Trello, this is a great place to do that as well. And you are going to literally write down every single thing that is in your brain competing for your time right now. Anything and everything that you can think of that needs to get done. So for instance, I come back from a trip. I start having all sorts of crazy, I got to do the laundry. I need to get to the grocery store. I haven't checked my email. I haven't checked my messages. We have to get the heater back on. I got to go get the dog. I got to run to get maybe the dog food. And you just start thinking about all these things. And every single thing just goes on a sticky note. We're not caring about order. We're not thinking about how long anything takes. We're not thinking about how important it is. What's actually happening is we are quieting that rising anxiety that's going on in our brain by getting everything that's churning up here out of our head. And this is why I like to do one thing per sticky note. You'll see why I recommend sticky notes here in a minute. Out where now my brain can see it. And so when we create the visual for our brains does, it takes us down a level. So now we're already in a place where we can start making more rational decisions. Okay, now remember, this is time boxed, no more than 10 minutes, because you could spend hours at this, right? The things that really are most pressing are going to come out in those first 10 minutes. So that's why I never let myself spend more than 10 minutes on this, because then you just start grasping and making stuff up that doesn't need to be there. The next step is, once we have all of those things out visually to see them, and I mean, you can use a piece of paper, but you'll see why I like the sticky notes here in a minute. The next step is I scanned through every single thing that came out, and I'm looking for anything that truly is a have to in the next 24 to 48 hours. Not a want to, not it would be nice, but a true have to. So for example, maybe I literally gave my dog its last scoop of food. Going to the pet store and getting new food would be a have to, or else I can't feed my dog. Same with coming back from a long family vacation. If there's no food in the house, okay, in the next 24 to 48 hours, maybe a have to is I need to get to the grocery store. But that nagging thing, that thing I needed to finish for work that isn't due for 10 more days, would not be on that short list of have tos. So if you're using the sticky notes, I will pull off all of my have tos in the next 24 to 48 hours, leave the other ones there, and now you're going to actually get into action with that very, very short, concise list. And we're going to leave those other things off to the side for now. Okay, so step one was that timed brain dump list. Step two is identifying your have tos for the next 24 to 48 hours, and then start executing those. So now that we are back in motion, our brain is going, oh yeah, we know what to do. So every single little thing, every errand you're running, every task that's getting done starts to quiet that overwhelm as well, and starts to kind of that muscle memory of, oh yeah, I know how to get stuff done. Now the final step, step three, is after that 24, 48 hours, now you get to come back the rest of the things that you listed out, and now you get to say, okay, now on this whole list, what's a have to just for the next 4 days? That's it, just the next 4 days. And you're going to pull those out, you're going to go sit in front of your calendar, and you're going to create the plan on how those items are getting done. Now again, if you want a reminder of the difference between a task list and a plan, go back and listen to the question number 7. I went into great detail and shared a great resource for you on how to learn how to start creating those plans. All right, that's your 3-step process. Your 10-minute timed brain dump, getting through the first 24 to 48 hours, then coming back and saying, okay, what needs to get done in the next 4 days, and creating that plan. At the end of those 3 steps, at this point, this is when you should be in a place now to resume your regular weekly planning. All right, again, go back and visit question number 7. I give a great resource for you to help you understand how to get started with weekly planning. What's important to understand is this 3-step process is not something that you should be doing as your regular way of getting through life. And unfortunately, most people are today. They are working from this, oh, let me just go do a brain dump, see what I can do today. Let me do a brain dump and see what I can do tomorrow. That keeps you in that elevated state of anxiety and overwhelm. Our goal is to get you out of overwhelm and then resume your regular planning process. Now, if you want to hear from some other women that are doing this and really learn how to kick overwhelm to the curb once and for all, meaning we go through this process and now we know what to do so we don't keep coming back here, I encourage you to go check out my limited series podcast that's called Ditch the Overwhelm. So you can go to any of your favorite podcast player, Apple, Spotify, wherever, even here on YouTube, and you can search for Ditch the Overwhelm podcast. And I've just got a limited series there for you that really leans into how we keep ourselves from constantly getting back into overwhelm. All right, I'll see you back here next week for our next question.